everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And today I have the opportunity to be speaking with Dr. Donald. And Dr. Donald, welcome. Tell us who you are and what you do.
So thank you for having me, Sam. My name is Dr. Donald. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a chiropractor here in downtown Toronto. I kind of have two, people always ask me kind of what I treat, and I kind of have two focuses. One of them being neck pain and headaches. That's one of my favorite things to treat. And then my other niche, which is obviously more relevant to right now, is the 2S LGBTQ plus community. I love to treat people that kind of fall into my own demographic and that I can relate to on a more in-depth level. And so that's what I do.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
So how does your work specifically help those in the 2S LGBT community perhaps start or grow their respective families? I know you don't typically treat a lot of expectant parents, but that doesn't mean that you can't help get them ready.
Totally. So a lot of expecting parents, number one, it's a stressful time of life kind of in general, both expecting and once baby comes are like wildly stressful. And so stress can show up in our bodies in a bunch of different ways. And one of the big ways that stress does come up is in muscle tension, because our bodies just can't relax. We wear our shoulders like earrings like this. We like lean over our desks and look like little hunchbacks. And so a lot of my work can come in there, where I'm helping patients decrease their stress and then also teach them really healthy and active ways to reset, whether it be their posture or just teach them how to kind of set up their desk properly, or set up maybe a baby's room properly, or set up like where you're keeping things. Like I'm thinking like storage of all of the new things that you like all of a sudden need. You don't necessarily want the things that you're using the most often to be on the highest shelf, like things like that.
Right.
It's somewhere that I can really come in and help almost coach patients on like how to set things up and like where to put things so that you're being the most conscious of the way you're moving and all that kind of stuff. And then as well, pregnancy can also increase a hormone called relaxin, and that essentially decreases the amount of, we call it, what do we call it? Tensegrity, that's the word. It's not a word that I use very often.
No.
The ligaments and the tendons in the body. And so when they don't get as much, so the tensegrity decreases, which means that they're not as strong. So strengthening up the muscles around those ligaments that are getting a little bit weaker, especially later on in pregnancy, can be really beneficial. And then there are some other techniques that can be done in terms of, I don't do a ton of these, but I do some kin taping that can be done to help with pregnancy. And then mostly in that area.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think it's something that people don't necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about, but with that extra weight of carrying the pregnancy, that K-tape can really go a long way in just helping to feel like you've got some belly support and pelvic support, right?
Yeah, and one thing too that people don't necessarily realize is that there's a lot of change in breast tissue when you're pregnant as well, and post-pregnancy. And that can play a huge role on how your upper back feels and how much weight kind of is forward. And so it can also cause you to like hunch a little bit more forward, just because you're not used to, your muscles aren't used to it necessarily strong enough to be carrying that extra breast tissue. So that can play a role too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Are there things that you might look for working in the capacity that you do that your clients would argue make you better suited to work with the 2S LGBTQIA plus community than perhaps heterosexual professionals who work in a similar capacity?
Sometimes I just don't think that heterosexual comparatives really understand the trials and tribulations that 2S LGBTQ people go through to have children, to even like start the concept of having children.
Right.
And so I think just having someone who kind of, and like, I don't necessarily understand or know all of the details because I've never been through it myself, but I do understand like at a high level kind of what people are going through when they're either trying to get pregnant, adopt, surrogacy, whatever the option might be.
Right.
It's a lot of time, it's a lot of stress, it's probably going to cost you a lot of money. Like there are a whole bunch of different things, different aspects that I don't necessarily think that the heterosexual community really thinks about in that way. So just kind of relating to patients on that level, I think is really important in discussing care too. And it makes it easier.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Are there any pearls of wisdom that you've learned over the years that your clients are especially lucky to learn from you that they may not learn from other professionals?
That's a really good question. Clinical pearls that I've learned over the years. So not necessarily from that they wouldn't be able to learn this from other people, but what I do think is that people don't they don't really give enough weight to the fact that your stress plays a huge role in what you're doing. And I do a lot of stress management talks with people. So I talk a lot about different like ways to decrease stress and different like breathing techniques and self-care techniques and all that kind of stuff that I don't find a lot of people are talking about.
Right.
And then one of the other things that people also don't really realize is that like the amount of, and this, every time I say it, I think it sounds so simple, but every time I say it sounds so simple, people are like, no, it's not. But it's like the amount of water you're intaking is like really important. And people, I'm sitting here saying, drink water. I'm like notoriously bad for drinking water. Like I think I was a camel potentially in another life. But people don't realize that like drinking the right amount of water is really important in your stress levels, in how much pain you're feeling, in recovery time, in like literally every aspect of your life. Our body is made up of, I mean, this stat, I've seen different numbers, but like 70% water. So I think that is one thing that I like really harp on with my patients.
Right.
And I think that hopefully they listen.
And hopefully they listen. It's true. But you're right. And then when we think about adding a pregnancy to that, you've got the extra blood volume in a person's body when they're carrying a baby. So
Yeah.
this time of year, I'm constantly reminding clients of mine that you want between 2 and 3 liters baseline of water a day. And that can be surprising to people because when we say we need to drink enough water, we're thinking, okay, well, how much is that? But
yeah,
it's a lot of water. And if you need to set an alarm on a regular basis through the day, right? So that you're like, okay, got to start that next class.
Yeah. And one thing that I've really noticed has helped for myself is, and this sounds so foolish, but like last weekend or 2 weekends ago, I went out and bought a new water bottle. And it sounds so silly, but like I'm drinking more water because I want to drink it out of my new water bottle. Like, doesn't that sound so silly? But it works. Like if that's
it sounds exactly like my wife though. So it doesn't sound all that silly to me.
Like if that's what you need to do to have more water in your day, then like go out and get the new water bottle. Maybe it'll help.
Exactly.
Yeah. It sounds so silly, but whatever.
Recognizing that you haven't been there, done that, you haven't grown your family. That said, have there been points in your life when you've been made to feel the other?
Oh, all the time. I mean, like it happens like all the time when I'm walking down the street. Like I do live in the village in Toronto. So like I am kind of lucky that like I have surrounded myself with people of my community. I say lucky, but it has very much been a conscious decision.
Right.
So, but like, I mean, all the time, made to feel like I'm outside of kind of what normally goes on. So like, I don't have children. I am not married, but I get asked all the time, like, when are you having children? And like, I just think that is a question that is so, A, I don't really think that anybody should ask that question, but right. B, people are going to, and I can't control that. But it's a question that I find that heterosexual people are so used to asking and so used to hearing like a very concise, thought through, like, oh, we're planning on this year, we're planning on now, we're trying whatever. And like, it does feel a little bit, I feel like I have been kind of made to seem like a bit of an outsider because that's not currently in my plan and not really ever going to be.
Right.
So yeah, but I like that is one thing that I think that society just assumes that you just because you're a human, you want to have children. And I don't necessarily, well, that's obviously not the case because not everybody wants to, regardless of who you are.
Right.
So that's just one example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, understanding that there's bias, you've agreed to be a part of this show, so obviously you see some merit in it. But as somebody, as a professional who's coming in, speaking to us today and talking in a show that is specifically designed to support the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, do you see merit in it? Where do you think the benefits would be for those who do want to have a family, who are thinking about it, who are in the process of it?
Yeah, so a couple of things like immediately come to mind on that. One of them being the practitioners that you're seeing in the show are obviously kind of aware of different gender expressions and how that might relate into pregnancy and childbirth and being a parent, et cetera, the whole process. And so that is something that I think is really important and like super beneficial. And then kind of on that same vein, the other thing that I think of is like gender neutral, like raising a potentially gender neutral child, or if you like, I've heard of stories where people don't use pronouns for their children at all. They don't use gendered pronouns at all. They just use they when they're talking about their child, and they've let their own child in the future decide what pronouns they want to use. And I think just like, I'm just thinking of like gender neutral clothing or like accessories or nursery items, whatever that might be. Like, I think that shows like this are really beneficial, and those are the things that come to mind, is like the gender expression portion of it that I think is really beneficial.
Yes.
And something that's not really seen anywhere else that I know of.
No, you're right. You're right. Absolutely. Full transparency to our viewers, I do run a chiropractic clinic. And so obviously I truly feel like there's a strong benefit to chiropractic. It's been a part of my life since I was a child. My own children were adjusted within, a week of being born. But in terms of the birthing parent, just a reminder from you about the physiologic benefits of maintaining good, frequent chiropractic adjustments in terms of subluxations and that kind of thing. Can you just touch on that? Because I think that people give into this new, I'm a parent now, all of my attention needs to go to that. But what about this care we need to give ourselves as new parents, and how that helps us overall?
Yeah, so I mean, new parents receive one follow-up appointment, generally one follow-up appointment from their doctor in the 6-week period after birth, which when I learned that, I thought that was wild.
Yes.
Especially seeing as like baby, like who knows how many appointments they're gonna have, like could be a huge number, who knows? Yes. So I think that having someone who is kind of in your corner, whether or not you've seen them through the whole process or whether or not you've seen them previous to pregnancy or whatever it might be, I think having someone in your corner who like cares about what's going on with you is really important, because it's very easy right after childbirth to go all, and obviously understandable, to go all in on baby and kind of forget about you. So it's really important to remember to take care of yourself. And a chiropractor can also, adjustments are amazing, and I do them all the time and all that kind of stuff. But what is even, I see potentially even more important, is the right exercises post pregnancy and post childbirth to help regain the core strength, to help regain pelvic strength, to help, I mean, everybody knows that like labor is not fun, and like delivery, not fun. So like there's a whole lot of different things that can go on. Low back pain can happen. It's not super unusual to have headaches and migraines post-pregnancy, like all that kind of stuff can be really beneficial. A chiropractor can be really beneficial in helping you out in that way, and just kind of being like your own little cheerleader in the back corner if you need like a new exercise or like a reminder on stress reduction or whatever it might be. I think just having someone there to cheerlead for you, I think is really important, because it's generally all about baby, and yes, it should be, but like we need to talk about parents as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything we haven't covered yet that you were hoping we'd take a moment to be able to learn from you today?
I don't think so. This was really great.
Oh, good.
Super, these questions were like super well-rounded. I really liked these. So that
Thank
was
you.
great. Thank
Thank you.
you.
How can people find you? If they
Yeah,
want to reach out to you to come in and see you or what have you?
yeah. So I've kept things as easy as I possibly can. My website is drdonaldlittlewood.com. And you can reach me via email at drdonald@drdonaldlittlewood.com. I've tried to keep it as simple as I possibly can.
Doesn't get more simple than that. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. Super. I
yeah.
really want to thank you for your time today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Take care.